All right, we are back Wednesday night. Man, oh man, what an interesting day. You know, we didn't see a whole lot of price movement. Bitcoin almost back to 80,000. Fear and greed index back at 60 plus. I don't know about you guys. I don't feel like we're back into the greed area yet, but apparently the market sentiment is. I feel like, we still got a little bit more turbulence to go through, maybe a little more volatility before we get to the big green candles and all the fun stuff that people are hoping for later this year. Later this year could be tomorrow, it could be a couple months, it could be Q3, Q4. I don't know when it's going to be, but I do feel like it's coming. And that's predicated on a few things that came out today. So I know you guys remember me talking about the underwater sea cables a little bit. We did get validation that Iran is potentially looking to cut those. 97% of the global internet access and distribution just happens to run through Strait of Hormuz. Wild. Mario had put out, a full schematic of all the different underwater sea cables and where those run through the Gulf there, the Indian Ocean. Really interesting to see how many of those are tied in there. Thank you, my wonderful wife with the tea. Been drinking a lot of tea today. Minding my own business. So anyway, it was interesting to see that this morning on the underwater sea cables. And then I was very busy today and didn't get to spend a ton of time over there on Twitter. Back-to-back meetings all day long. Fruitful though, a lot of good conversations. But then we got the OCC coming out talking about providing guidance on stablecoins so that you wouldn't have to have the Clarity Act. Really interesting that they would be doing that. They've asked for comments back on this by May 1st from the banks. The banks obviously asked for a 60-day extension. Don't ask, don't get. But all that being said, I don't know that they're going to give them that much time. Maybe they give them a 30-day extension. And so that would put us around June 1st. I think they may press them. There's already been a lot of opposition to this and him hawing around and back and forth. And that's what's caused the Clarity Act to get pushed out. So, I mean, they've already had the conversations. I don't know why they would need an additional 60-day extension unless they're just trying to delay the inevitable and push things back. I think the OCC may push back and pull that in significantly. I think they might give them a little leeway, maybe like somewhere between 10 and 30 days. But I'd expect that, they are going to ask them to move faster because, again, they've already been in conversations. They already know what the situation is about the yield, and them trying to buy time, I don't think is going to work well with the regulator. So hopefully we get comments back and on that proposal by May 1st, and then we see implementation of that in the not too distant future. And that would really quell any of the issues that are still outstanding for the implementation of stablecoins. Again, like I mentioned before, I felt like the regulator, because the CFTC and the SEC had issued joint guidance, I figured the OCC would show up and say, hey, we'll just provide a guidebook here and not have to wait on the Clarity Act getting passed. And that is exactly what they're doing. So fast tracking things, like I've said many times, I don't believe we need the Clarity Act in order to be able to see price appreciation for XRP. We do need the stablecoin piece, though. Like, that needs to be in place. I think there needs to be guidance by the OCC that's concrete for the banks to be able to issue the stablecoins. And the reason for that is we need the demand for treasuries to be able to stabilize the bond market as the rest of the world de-risks from those treasuries and sell those off as they rotate into their own bonds when the reverse carry trade happens. Talked with a group today. I won't say who, but they are a tokenized deposit issuer, which is different than stablecoins. Those are outside the purview of the Genius Act and would be allowed to provide you guys, retail, myself included, with yield on your deposits at the bank. I think there will be an announcement in the not too distant future that you guys will be excited about between those two counterparties. Greg Kidd involved as usual. So we'll see, when they decide to put that information out. Again, I won't say who or what or with who, just that Greg Kidd's involved, which, I don't know if you guys know who Greg Kidd is. If you don't, you should go check him out. He is a prolific investor. He was the 4th or 5th employee at Ripple, got them the meeting with the Fed in 2014. I don't know that he ever exercised his option on XRP. I know he was on another YouTuber's channel many years ago talking about $1 billion or $1 billion XRP option that he had at 0.03 of a penny. Greg, Greg Kidd, Kidd. If you guys want to go look him up. So it seems like anything he touches turns to gold. I mean, he was in on Twitter, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb. Like, again, prolific angel investor, has done exceptionally well in that regard, and is a large visionary. He's also the person that talked about XRP being an intergalactic currency back in the day. So excited to see all that playing out. Excited to see the OCC stepping in here and providing guidance so that we can move past this and the banks can start issuing stable coins. Tokenized deposits don't require the treasuries. They're just tokenized dollars on the balance sheet for these banks. And they don't require the backing. But we need stable coins because otherwise we don't really have a way for there to be demand domestically for U.S. treasuries. That is an absolute need for us to be able to maintain dominance and sit, in the position that we do in this new paradigm, and also make sure that we're not in a position where we default on our debts or have to buy those treasury bonds back when the reverse carry trade does inevitably play out. On that, we'll talk about the macro a little bit before we get into the questions. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me. Please like, subscribe, share if you get value from this. We'll go ahead and jump into the macro. So looking at the oil price in yen, we're back up over 1,500. We're really at the point where global supply is going to start being constricted here. We are close to 30 days into the conflict since the strait has been shut down. And really that's the transit time that a lot of this oil would have taken to get to the farthest places. So now no more of that oil is coming in. Now is when I think you're really going to start to see the effects of that take place. Japan has been releasing their reserves, but that really hasn't done much for market price. We've seen some reductions every time Trump has come out and said, it's over. We're opening the Strait of Hormuz, the markets plummet. And then inevitably Iran or us come back out and say, never mind, just kidding, strait's closed. Whipsawing the market around, removing longs and shorts. Anybody that's got leverage, they are taking care of business. So, waiting for, really, we want to see oil back up at $18,000 per barrel. I thought in the beginning that it might only take 12.5, 1,400, somewhere in there for Japan to have to move. But with the strategic reserve that they have, I think they're able to kind of quell that a little bit, at least for their local economy, and hold off inflation. But now that we've seen, what would have been the new shipments landing there, no longer landing there, and the longer that this drags out, it's going to have to cause an issue. I think the damage has already been done. Like I've said, there's already a huge disruption in the supply chain. Even if they open the strait tomorrow, it's going to be at least 30 days before that oil starts moving back through there. They're going to uncap wells and start production again. A lot of the storage facilities there in Iran are getting full. So they are also capping wells. They're shutting things down. They're not pushing, the oil out. Also talks about them shutting down the Strait of Oman on the other side of the peninsula there in the Indian Ocean and the Gulf. If that were to happen, or they cut these underwater sea cables, I think that you're going to see the conflict escalate. Again, praying for all the people in that region. I don't want any collateral damage or death or issues. However, this is the catalyst that really backs Japan and the global economy into a corner where they're going to have to pivot to this new financial system, which obviously I have vested interest in and believe in a certain outcome. So, take it all with a grain of salt. It's probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is for financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always consult with a financial advisor, tax professional, or an attorney before making any legal, tax, or financial decisions. The opinions shared here tonight are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of its subsidiaries. So I am the chairman of that company. Obviously, also have vested interest there. We don't have any sponsors on this channel because, well, I own these companies, and I guess you could call those the sponsors. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Again, appreciate y'all taking time out. Just one more before we jump in here. Yen versus the USD. We're hanging out at 159, back close to the real danger zone of 160, 161, 162. That is where I think we're going to see intervention by the Bank of Japan. We do have about 7 days until we're going to see their monetary policy come out. We also have the FOMC meeting for the Fed here on the 29th, which will be about 24 or 48 hours after the Bank of Japan issues their financial guidance for the markets. Fed also looking like they may end up having to raise rates. That is not good for the economy here. You've got credit markets in the situation. People need liquidity. People have bet on interest rates coming down, leverage themselves so that they could refinance. We've got global debt at an all-time high. Another interesting statistic, just before we jump into the questions, the largest percentage of holders of equities are now 70 years plus in age. There's a huge discrepancy between 40 years and younger and 70 years and older. Traditionally, that's been somewhere between 5 and 6%. So there's 17% of the entire stock market is held by people that are 70 plus, and only 3% is currently being held by people that are younger than 40 years old. Just for perspective, that was much closer to like 6% back in the early 90s and 2000s, the discrepancy between the two. Obviously, people that are older have had more time to invest in stocks and are going to hold a larger portion in comparison to somebody that's in their 40s. But that just shows the large discrepancy between those that are that age and the younger generation, and also kind of highlights the wealth transfer that's going to be occurring in the not too distant future. Inevitably, we are all going to pass away. A lot of what we do at Digital Ascension Group is work with people so that there's continuity. You have next gen planning, and all those assets pass and go through. They don't go through probate. They're structured the right way. So, if you are in that demographic, awesome to be there. I think you're living your best life. Boomers have had a really good run, and probably the ones that are watching this are invested in crypto, and I think we'll continue to have a good run. This person says a bunch of people saying AMC over here. I haven't looked at AMC in a while. Let's take a look at that real quick. Stock. We had a little bump today. We're up 2%. It's looking good. It's looking like it might go on another run here, similar to what we saw for Wall Street Bets. Is way down from what we saw back in 2021 during that period. And maybe there's a bunch of shorts again on this position, and we might see another short squeeze. Last time, again, they oversold both GameStop and AMC when the short squeeze happened. A lot of people following into those stocks, and that's when it became apparent that we did not have one unified ledger in the stock market, and the delays in transfer between the clearinghouses and the brokers caused a lot of issue. They oversold the stock by 139% last time, by 39%. And had to call back stocks from a lot of people that purchased on Webull and Robinhood, many other apps where it looks like you're trading real time, even though you're not. So maybe that will happen again. Hopefully they hold off till they've actually tokenized the stock market, and then there won't be those issues because you won't be able to buy shares that don't exist, and settlement times will be, T+0 here in the near future when they do move to real-time settlement. I don't know what the date for that's going to be, but you got that. And then you also have the BIS giving their guidance for these assets. It looks like in May here, we're going to get some guidance around BTC, ETH, Solana, and XRP. I wouldn't be surprised if they kicked that out to June and it was toward the end of Q2 when they issued that guidance. But as for now, that is on the docket for May this year. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Weird Kids TV, he says, Jake, love the vids. Can we now admit that this is going to take longer than expected? Bank of Japan already confirmed no hikes in April. pushed till June. We know they're going to kick the can again. I mean, what's going on? 2030? Look, I know people are impatient, and it feels like we're dragging across jagged glass here, scraping along the bottom. But that is what it feels like before you have a significant move. This is what hard feels like. I know, like for me, when I understand that, it gives me some solace. Like, it sucks, right? Like it would be great if things would move faster. I think everybody would like it to. I'm still confident here in 2026. I was confident at the end of last year. You know, again, was a little off on that. I'm okay with being little off on that. Other people were not okay with me being off on that. But again, you don't want to over leverage yourself or put yourself in a bad position. You need to make rent, need to make your bills. Don't be irresponsible with the ways you invest. But all that being said, you know, I'm still confident in this year. Monica Long wouldn't come out and say that this was going to be the year for institutional adoption at scale for XRP if we weren't going to see that. So I know there's a lot of other influencers telling you that it's going to take years, and they've been beaten down over many years of content, you know, being wrong about delays and regulation. And at this point, they would much rather be conservative because it just keeps them from having so much flack or having to deal with it. I'm going to tell you guys what I really think. I'm not going to sugarcoat stuff. Again, I don't have sponsors or other people telling me that I have to say this or that. Like, these are my direct opinions. And again, it's just one data point. You should listen to a bunch of people. Not saying there's anything wrong with any of the other influencers out there or people that talk about this stuff. I think that they're very educated, they're very well informed, they're intelligent, and everybody has their own thesis. So if you think 2030, you're probably not going to be disappointed, right? I think that that's probably where people get messed up or have some animosity. When expectations don't meet reality, people get frustrated, and that's understandable. So if your timeline is 2030 and you're just dollar cost averaging, set it, forget it, and that's your time frame, I think that that's a really good play, because when reality exceeds your expectations, that's a much better position to be in versus the other way around where it does not meet your expectations. So again, I'm still going to come out here and tell you guys the timeframes that I think are legitimate based on the circumstances that are playing out real time in the macro with regulations and other things. And everybody else is probably going to do the same thing. And then you get to decide what your thesis is. Jay, he says, will a Wyoming LLC protect my assets in a bankruptcy? Well, a bankruptcy, depending on what type of bankruptcy you file, would be to help you with creditors, right? So if you've maintained your corporate veil, a restructuring of assets, so depending on what type of bankruptcy you file, whether it's Chapter 7, 11, or 13, those are all very different. 11 is a restructuring, so 7, 13 is total bankruptcy type deal. I am not an attorney, so I can't tell you for sure. It would probably depend on your circumstance, how well you've maintained your corporate veil, and the separation between your personal assets and the assets in the LLC. A trust is going to be much better for that. So an irrevocable trust where those assets have been gifted out of your taxable estate, they're no longer under your control. You have a trust protector and a distribution trustee. You can't be in a pending bankruptcy or have outstanding debts or going through a divorce when you set up an irrevocable trust. And you really don't want any of those things to happen for the next 2 years. It takes about 2 years to season in the creditor protection in a revocable living trust. That would be the ironclad way to be able to protect those assets during bankruptcy. Inside of an LLC, there could be a way to pierce the corporate veil, again, depending on how stringent you have maintained that separation. And again, not an attorney. I don't claim to be. You would want to seek legal advice before, ensuring that. But I think in some circumstances it would, in other circumstances it would not. Nicole, she says, "G'day from Australia, Jakey. You've had a couple of enthusiastic interviews with Ben from Constellation DAG. Yes, I have. Love Ben. You've never mentioned it as a top crypto. Any reason why? Also, tinfoil hat time. Any link between the two DAGs? You know, there's not a link between Digital Ascension Group and DAG or Constellation. We do like the project. You know, they have a lot of real world applications for a metadata oracle. So for those that don't know what that is, Chainlink is an oracle, right? It transmits data between the real world and on chain for smart contracts to be able to execute. A metadata oracle would be able to review large lakes of data and then provide subsets of that data without disclosing the underlying information. So what's a real world application of that? I met a gentleman here in town. We'll call him Kevin. He was getting his hair cut and I was talking to him. He works for a large data management firm for medical data. So they don't disclose any of the individuals' data that would, you know, cause HIPAA compliance issues. But they do, you know, basically do like, you know, 50-year-old men in this jurisdiction tend to have this type of life expectancy and are on these medications. And on average will live this long, right? So that helps actuaries, it helps pharmaceutical manufacturers, and they sell all of that metadata to those people so that they can then, you know, market certain things or look through that to be able to, you know, go after different market segments, or it's profitable to be able to do that. The way that DAG is currently working on, they have some stuff with government, but they also have a partnership with Panasonic. I don't know how much he wants me to disclose about what exactly they're doing. He may have even talked about it in one of the interviews, but I don't want to step on toes. There's a lot of applications in insurance, I'll say that. And depending on what the underlying data is, you could help underwrite claims very quickly. And so they're able to show that real time to the counterparties and underwrite claims and get insurance to pay out much faster. And that's just one of the verticals for a metadata oracle. So bullish on DAG. I think we're at 5 cents, less than 5 cents at this point. I do think that there will be price appreciation on that digital asset. You know, they've been acquired by a family office, Constellation has, and they're going to be merging that with AI. AI Squared is the family office here in Dallas, actually, that has made that acquisition, and they're applying that metadata oracle and DAG to a bunch of their underlying subsidiaries and investments that they've made to be able to add additional value to that ecosystem. So you see the Waltons do this and many other large family offices. They will make acquisitions or make investments in certain companies that have tangential benefit to other companies that, or investments that they've made, or companies that they run where they can implement that. And so it adds significant financial value to the company that they then acquire or have made the investment in by basically, I don't want to say guaranteeing contracts, but helping to negotiate those contracts. And I think that that will happen for Constellation and by proxy, the token there. And I think they're going to be implementing some staking and some other stuff for the token as well. Actually, they already have staking. We actually run a validator on the network, and people in the mastermind have staked that with our validator to be able to earn yield on their DAG. So yeah, love that project. Love having him on the channel. Excited to have him back here in the near future. Delve, DELEV 3. They say, greetings from Argentina. Very cool. First question, tinfoil hat. How many riddles are correlated with the domino theory? Ooh, how many riddles are correlated with the domino theory? You know, again, I take everything kind of with a grain of salt, and then I think critically through things, but there are definitely multiple riddles that are out there, accounts on Twitter that have provided certain information over the years that correlate with a lot of the domino theory. Second, do you think we're going to go exponential ranges presetted by announcement? I think we're going to see a bump in XRP to somewhere between 50 and 100 bucks on the first go. And then there may be some volatility after that before it pushes to 4 digits. And then again, you know, some sideways trending or use for a period of time before they push it up to 5 digits. I think it's going to kind of move like a stair step when it goes. There are other people that think it's going to go right to $10,000. There's other people that think it's going straight to 4 digits. There's other people that think it's going to, go up to $5 and then $10 and then $25. I think the chart's going to gap somewhere between where it's at now when there's a supply shock that happens and that price moves somewhere between 50 and 100 in a short period of time. Is it going to stay there? It's all going to depend on it actually being used to be able to settle value. If it starts being used immediately to be able to facilitate that, the volume over the network would sustain those prices, and you're not going to see the drawback that a lot of people would be anticipating. So that's my thesis. We'll see if those things play out or not. Third question, for small bag holders, range of 2,000 to 7,000 XRP, where would the price need to be in order to be able to work with DWP or DAG? So, what would that be? I mean, our minimum today is $100,000 in crypto. We will likely raise that post price appreciation for a period of time. And the reason I say that is I just think that there's going to be a significant amount of inbound that we're dealing with to be able to, provide the level of service that we want to provide. We'll have to scale up and then create solutions with tech to be able to provide value to everybody at the level that we want to. So, post price appreciation, we're probably going to move it to $20 million for a short period of time for the public. Those that are in certain ecosystems might get a lower threshold to entry there. Got to work on compliance for that. We actually hired a new compliance officer. Met with her today, which was very interesting. Great lady, excited to have her on board. You guys will get to know who that is next Monday. We will have some PR that comes out about a lot of the hires that we've been making in Digital Ascension Group. Big news coming out. So excited about that. But back to the question at hand, 2,000 to 7,000 XRP. Later this year, we want to provide value as much as we can to everybody in the community, but not at the expense of our current clients and not at the expense of, dropping the level of service or what we're providing. So I got to walk a line, and I don't want to leave people out in the wind. I'm doing everything that I can to be able to kind of roll people in that are in that demographic. We just launched our app last week where we partnered with Uphold to be able to provide a white label solution for their infrastructure. The DAG portal is what's currently available. It's a web app. We are developing a mobile native application that will be on your phone. And the long-term vision is to be able to unify custody across multiple platforms and allow access to that for all of the XRP family and community to be able to get, whether get into things that'll be DeFi or structured products, depends on your risk tolerance, get you access to an advisor so that you have somebody that you can lean on and make sure that you're making the best decisions as you diversify your portfolio into different avenues to be able to generate yield or returns with your XRP, borrow against it, bank accounts, money market accounts, credit cards, lines of credit, all the financial products that you'd expect from an investment bank or private, a multifamily office or private client provider. So working on all those things. I think we'll have the majority of that to market here in 2026 and hopefully be able to participate with everybody that has, 4 digits in XRP. This person says, "Dear mods, put somebody in timeout on Monday for saying something that were negative out of frustration. I wanted to apologize and clean up my act and keep it positive." Appreciate that, man. Just so people know, we have 1,700 people, 17,000 people there in the mastermind. People get frustrated, just like the gentleman earlier that was like, is this going to take longer? They're not going to raise the rates, all these things. Look, it's completely fine to be emotional and be frustrated. We try to maintain a high level of professionalism there in the mastermind. Profanity is not, we're not a big fan of profanity there in the mastermind. And again, we know there's 17,000 people and all of those people have different personalities and they also deal with stress different ways. So the mods do a really good job of trying to navigate that and give people time to cool off. We don't, We will remove people from the mastermind if they get in a position where they continually, don't uphold the standards or the professionalism that we have there in that group. But the culture is fantastic. People want to help one another. People want to lift other people up and provide value and console people if they're down about whatever else, and also pray for other people if they have certain situations going on. So we want to continue to cultivate all of those things there in the group. This person says misbehave. Look, again, I'm not perfect. Nobody is, and people have a bad day and they get grumpy. I get in a mood every once in a while. I was in a mood on Monday morning this week. You can ask my team. But all that being said, I will come back and say, hey, I was a little rash or rough with my language earlier. Apologize for that and make amends. And what he's doing there, so we appreciate that. And I'm sure they would love to take you at a timeout, make sure you can participate there in the group. Off-Grid Hero says, what do you think about IOTA machines crypto, iRobot? So IOTA is the Internet of Things. A lot of people have talked about that being an ISO token and involved with the ecosystem that is going to be built out in the future. The Megazord, shout out to Kurt for putting that analogy out there. I think IOTA is going to be good. It's also an Oracle. So I look at Chainlink like a privatized Oracle. It's going to be for most private large enterprises, whereas IOTA is more of a public infrastructure Oracle. So the protocols and networks that the government uses, I think they will choose IOTA for the Oracle to be able to transmit that data into smart contracts, to be able to execute those. And obviously, at scale, smart cities and infrastructure, I think is going to be the main application for that. So we're not there yet. We don't have a ton of smart cities. You got Acon building a smart city in Africa, and you've got a few other ones globally that are starting to adopt that. I would venture to say that Dubai is close to a smart city. They have surveillance everywhere. It's almost that you're never on camera if you're in Dubai. And that's also why their crime rate is basically zero. Not a whole lot of bad things happen there. So all that being said, Big Brother is a thing. IOTA is going to do well, but I do think it's going to be some time before you actually see that network implemented at scale. I think you're going to need a lot more public infrastructure in place that requires that smart contract or those smart contracts and that Oracle to provide that information. Y'all have great questions tonight. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, like I said in the beginning, we got a few more people on here. If you do find value in this, please like, share, subscribe. It does help the channel grow. And before we go here, or on to the next one, we're almost at 200,000 subs on YouTube. So if you're watching on TikTok or another platform, it would mean a lot to me if you could go ahead and go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel, even if that's not the main forum in which you take this information in. That's a goal for me this year in 2026 is to get to over 200,000 subs. So if we could pump those rookie numbers up, that'd be awesome. It's very much appreciated. Maddie says, Jake, the Canol Alvarez of XRP. Is it highly likely or highly unlikely that Ripple buys Uphold, Amo to do la Q? I'm gonna butcher that. My Spanish is not great. I could poquito español. So I don't think that they're going to acquire Uphold, and I'll tell you why. Ripple has never been a retail-facing company. They're enterprise and institutional. They're developing products. They built a full stack for that. Uphold is a great partner for them to be able to transmit money and exchange currencies for XRP and ODL. They've been doing that for a couple of years. I don't think that cost them a ton of money. I think that they negotiated very well with Uphold, and then there's been some good economics for both of them on that transaction. That would be the only piece of that business that I think they would acquire. They don't need a crypto exchange. They have Medico for Ripple custody. They bought Palisade. They have Rail for stablecoin issuance. a lot of what they're doing is just for XRP and RLUSD. Those are the two main assets that they're going to be using to generate revenue over the next however long they're around, which I think will be a long, long time for Ripple. So all that being said, I think it's more likely that Uphold will go public in the not too distant future. There's something I wish I could say right now that I can't because we're in the middle of it there in the mastermind. But if you want to learn more, you can join the mastermind and go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, gets you the first month for $2. If you're in Carbon 1, you might be able to participate in what I can't talk about. All right, we got another one. I say from 1 to 10 rate, 428 Japan interest rate hikes. The next day, the U.S. lowers interest rates, and then Panda sits down to eat popcorn, waiting for the show, and nobody wants to go to work. Then the honor guard is seen going into battle. Then XRP changes to world and its big heart, and finally a big X in the middle of infinity sends and receives. 1 to 10. I'll say this. I think the next 3 to 4 months are going to be very pivotal here in 2026. What happens in that period of time, I think a lot of y'all may anticipate the domino theory and many of the other things that I've talked about. Do they kick the can past this period right here? I don't know that they can. Now, if they can use financial engineering and curb, they can use quantitative easing or something. It wouldn't be quantitative easing. That would continue to cause inflation there in Japan. They could reduce M2 money supply or do something else to be able to mitigate the yen depreciating against the dollar. And again, if the Fed raises interest rates, that could also cause problems because our dollar would strengthen against their yen, and then they would have to raise interest rates in correspondence with that. If the Fed lowers interest rates, then that trade may not make sense anymore for other people that have the their returns of their borrowed money in U.S. Treasuries, because the yields will drop. Our currency would depreciate against the yen. Now, if the Fed came down 25 basis points and the yen and Japan held their interest rates, that would really be the only way that I think they could continue to walk this line of where things sit. But if we reduce interest rates here, that could cause additional issues for things that the Fed has to watch, both unemployment and inflation. So I think it's likely that the Fed will hold. If Japan does nothing and just sits here, I think that it'll likely end up being an emergency meeting that they have to roll out in May or June to be able to move things and let everything roll out. I think that they need stablecoin regulation in place. So until, if the OCC had come out and said, this is what it is, too bad, so sad, and hadn't asked for comments from the banks by May 1st, I would have said, yeah, they'll probably go ahead and roll it. But because there's a delay here and the implementation of the yield on these stable coins is probably going to take a little bit longer, I think they might hold here at the end of April, and we may not see anything until May. Once, the guidance from the OCC has been put in place, those comments have been had, and they roll that out, that's when I think you're going to see everything unwind. Because if they do it prior to that, we're going to have a big problem for the bond market here in the U.S., and I don't think the U.S. is going to allow that to take place. Roughnet says, I think you should end up with a sponsor for tea. Where's this still? People are so nice, by the way. People send us packages of stuff, tea, all kinds of things. I just want to say, if you have not received a thank you from me, I did receive your stuff, and I really do appreciate all the gestures that people make sending us things. It's never been my intent starting this deal. Very humbling. I'm very grateful for any and all gifts that people do send our way, and that they are very much appreciated. But back to the sponsor for the tea, maybe it just kind of happened this way. My wife, makes sure that I don't have a scratchy throat, and I'm able to talk on here. And so we just started doing the tea thing, and people say I sound like Kermit. So the meme makes a lot of sense, and I just play along with it. It's fun for me, and it's become a thing. So they say you start off saying what kind of tea you're drinking that night, like orange bergamot, and then what brand. Roughing It, she always has some good comments. I appreciate the banter, and yeah, I mean, I wouldn't turn it down. There was actually a group that was doing coffee, and they were issuing some stuff on the XRPL, and we talked to them, and I told them to issue like a Millionaire brand coffee that was like a high-end premium roast, and I would drink that on the show. But we never really figured out what the economics and stuff were going to be on that, so we didn't end up doing it. But yeah, if somebody had some XRP tea, I would drink it, and I would definitely promote it. Nathan Parton says, Jim and I froze my credit card and exchange account for no reason. I called. They can't tell me why, and I need to email their exchange department. I did. No response. Now my cash in XRP is locked. I'm very sorry to hear that, Nathan. I do know the head of their institutional side of their business. If you want to email us, we can put you in contact with her, and that might help move things along for you. I'm not going to do that for everybody. We need to be careful about, that type of stuff. People are nice enough to give us their personal information and want to work with us. But if I can help you in some way, would love to do it. And that is another reason why, we don't like keeping our XRP and stuff on exchanges. And that's also why we rolled out the Uphold app. We have visibility into all of that. Now, there's still compliance and things there. So if you end up on a sanctions list, we're probably going to have to, freeze your account. But outside of that circumstance, you can call in and we can figure it out for you. You'll have somebody to talk to. So for those that do want those additional benefits, we are working on rolling those out through the Uphold app. And you will have customer service on our side to be able to contact somebody in the event that something like that happens. So, again, happy to help you try to get your situation rectified. But for those that, don't necessarily want to use exchanges for that reason, we want to provide an avenue where you get those tangential benefits without having to worry about all that. Jesus is Lord. That's what I'm talking about. Good name. They say, God is good. Yo, Jake, you need to hire someone to give you a quick rundown on current events right before the lives. You often miss pretty exciting things. Sometimes I do. I should probably use an LLM and create a skill that scans the last 24 hours of crypto news and have it print me out, all of the current events and kind of scan that before I jump on here. I'll start doing that. I think that's a really good, there's some good feedback and a good idea. Yeah, and just candidly, so I don't know that I want to show my calendar on here. I was in meetings I started my calls at 8 a.m. this morning. I had one gap. No, I didn't. I was on calls back to back the whole time until 4:30. Then I got to spend some time with my family and go play a little golf. So that's a long day's worth of work. About 9 hours on back-to-back calls. Got up to pee once. But during that time, I don't have time to get on social media and look at things. And our team does a good job of, putting out tweets and stuff. And I do need to be up to date on the market before I get on here. So I'm going to use that hack with the LLM. Corva, again, thank you for the super chats. They say, Mega Legend, do you think there's a 95% chance that Japan trade will happen during the Iran-US war, or will it happen after the war ends? I think it's going to happen during. I think that's the whole purpose of this, is to cause that to take place. So confident that, 95% chance it's going to happen during the war. Or the conflict what did Trump call it? Military deployment. He doesn't want to call it war, because if we're at war, then the IRS has the ability to, this person says, RJ says, dang, no call, my feelings. You're on this phone, RJ, that I'm recording this on. I will call you, and I apologize. So back to the question. This person says, how will directly depositing your paycheck with Uphold work with accessing your money for daily use, or once it's deposited, you can use it on the exchange? So if you have a debit card on their platform, then you'd be able to get access to that money real time. You also get some rewards for having your deposit, posted there. And then you also get cash back on the card. I think they ended the XRP cash back on the 31st. But I'm sure that they will be rolling out another promotion in the near future. I know that they posted something the other day that said that they had something exciting coming. We also have XRP Vegas next week. We've got, I think both Robin, or maybe Simon and Nancy both are going to be there. And I'm sure that they will be, using that stage to promote something new that they have coming out. So, but yeah, you should have immediate access. It's ACH. It funds your account. As long as you have a debit card tied to that, you should be able to spend it immediately, or, buy crypto, and now they have a way where it comes in and immediately gets allocated to crypto if you're looking to dollar cost average. This person says, hey, Jake, watching you for a while, was wondering what should we be asking during these Q&As? Appreciate what you offer, friend. Thank you for the kind words and the support and watching. A lot of the questions are about the macro on here, which I don't hate at all. I really enjoy that side of the market and talking with about those things. I think people would do good to focus on really structuring their estate and understanding some financial education about how to make investments, when to diversify, different risks with different types of investments. We cover all this stuff in the mastermind, right? Especially in the higher levels of the mastermind, we go over this stuff a lot. But most of the time, people on here are asking for price predictions or which, investments to make. It's a lot of, so I put out a five levels of crypto wealth video the other day. If you haven't watched that, I would encourage you to go check it out. And it's true. Most people are still the gambler, right? You're at the first level. You're dabbling in this. You are, getting shaken up by the market. You have an emotional response. You're FOMOing toward things. There are probably many people that are watching this that have progressed to level 2, which is the hodler, right? Like, so you kind of set it, forget it, dollar cost average into the assets that you think are going to do good over the long term. But you really haven't figured out how to structure those to mitigate creditor risk. Many people have gone ahead and set up LLCs, whether that's with us or another counterparty. I think that's a great first step in kind of maturing in your crypto journey. And then also trying to educate yourself on different types of trust and insurance products. Coach JV putting out great information. Watched his stuff the other day. Shout out to him and the Good Evening Crypto Show. Both Abs and Johnny doing a great job over there. If you guys don't follow both of their channels, highly recommend checking those out. Everybody that really gets it understands institutional custody for your crypto is the way to go. There are many companies out there that promote that they use institutional custody. We have, pretty stringent criteria that I'm going to talk about at Consensus in the RIA Day. We have a whole panel on that. The 5 different things that I use to be able to quantify real institutional custody. But any institutional custody is better than cold wallet or having your stuff on an exchange. I will say that. So, segregated accounts, ideally it's bankruptcy remote, ideally it's insured, ideally it's with a QC, and, whatever infrastructure that they're using isn't just MPC technology. They have some hardware security modules or HSMs associated with that, and they're FIPS compliant here in the US. So those are the 5 components. A lot of the institutional custodians have 2 or 3 of those. The higher end people like Fidelity or Anchorage, they're going to be all 5. So what else? I think through all these cool products every single day, and we're working to create a lot of those for everybody to be able to insure your assets in kind, different ways and applications that you can use DAOs or NFTs and real world applications, consulting and talking with other companies about, how to implement that. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I deal with is more, I don't want to say advanced, that's probably not the right word, but intricate or operational than, visionary or price oriented. So if people were asking those questions, I think those are probably the better questions to be asking. But you may have not got to the point that I'm at, where a lot of these things are a foregone conclusion for me. I've been here in the space for many years. I've had enough conversations and other things to lead me to believe that this is an inevitable outcome. And so I'm past the point of, trying to discern whether this is going to happen or if it isn't going to happen. And because it's a foregone conclusion, you kind of then move to the next step and start asking those questions about, well, how do I prepare for this inevitable outcome? All right. That was another super chat. Mario, Music Man. It's a Mario. He says, I'm 29 years old, vet. Thank you for your service, my man. He said, I decided to go back to school to get my business degree so I can get a job as a defense prime. I'm in the top 3% of XRP holders, and I've been buying since 2022. Hopefully my new career will make it a lot easier to hold. Cheers, my man. Congratulations. Sounds like you're on a great path for your career. You understand that, you need a higher income to sustain yourself and your family. And then the excess capital or disposable income that you have, if you're not upgrading your lifestyle, can be put toward investments for a better future. I want to say that that's probably something else that a lot of people are going to do. And, eventually you want to upgrade your lifestyle, right? I'm not saying don't do that. I would just say wait until you have more than enough income or excess liquidity or passive income to be able to supplement that. My rule on financial freedom is you're generating twice the amount of money that you need each month from a passive investment. And if you can do that, then you're good, right? Like that's the level of, some people have different numbers for FU money. That's how I quantify FU money, right? If you got enough put back, let's say if your nut every month is $5,000 and you're making 10 grand a month from, passive investments that don't require a ton of your attention, you're kind of in a position of FU, right? Like you can do what you want. You can work a job, you can quit a job, you can move around, you can, you have some disposable income, you can go on trips, you can pay for your kids' college. That's really kind of the level that I think a lot of people should be looking at. And it sounds like you're headed that direction. You're looking to be able to create, enough income for yourself that you can continue to invest and then hold that until it's able to supplement your income to be able to offset that. And you can then decide what you want to do. If you enjoy your job and you get a lot of fulfillment from it, that's my hope for most people. Because many people are like, yeah, I'm just going to retire. I'm going to sit on a beach. You're going to get bored. It might last a year and a half that you'll travel. And then you're going to be like, okay, like I need a reason to wake up and, go kick butt and make things happen and get fulfillment. And that's different for everybody. So maybe that's some of the other questions that I think would be great if people would ask, would be like, how do you find your purpose? I pray a lot. That's how I find my purpose. But everybody's different in that. Everybody has different life experiences and other ways that they want to give back. So if you can figure out that before price appreciation and understand, start doing some of those things now, start living in that way in your spare time, that's going to make the transition a lot easier for you. So again, shout out to you. Excited for your new career and keep up the great work. Thank you for the super chat. I don't see a question, but if I catch it in the comments later on, I will answer it. There it is again. They say, what do you think about banks lobbying the Clarity Act? From what I have heard, and again, this is hearsay, I've heard the bill in Congress, the Clarity Act, has now become the Elizabeth Warren bill. And in my mind, that really kind of means it's dead. I haven't got a chance to review the PACE Act, which is another bill that's been put forth that apparently benefits Ripple. Johnny and Abs talked about that on their show. I didn't get to watch all of it, but again, Shout out to those guys. They put together some good research. I'd go watch their show if you want a better understanding of the PASAC. I've still got to do some, back end work to really understand what that's about. But I am not. I was a really big fan of the Clarity Act. I wanted that to get passed last year with the Genius Act, and then when it didn't, I was on Capitol Hill advocating for both of those things, and to see it get stonewalled, and then the additional oppositions and banks trying to fight back for the yield, which they already basically agreed to in order to, because they're greedy. I don't know. I think anybody in a position that is benefiting from the current circumstances or is an incumbent, they are going to do whatever they can to continue to sit in that position and get those benefits. So it makes a lot of sense to me that they would continue to push this out and continue to string it along as long as they could. Oftentimes there's a shiny object that looks like the path forward that people that want certain outcomes will put out there, and it shows the other player's hand. I think that could have been what the Clarity Act was. Again, I don't know that it's going to get passed this year. I think it might take all the way till 2027 if we do see the Clarity Act passed. Just with, Michael Warsh being voted on, the PACE Act, you've got some other legislation that needs to be put through. They really haven't come to a resolution on all the language in the Clarity Act. And then you have a recess in August and you got midterms. I'm losing faith that that's going to happen here this year. And with it, like I said, potentially being Elizabeth Warren's bill, there's going to be a lot of opposition to that. So I understand why the banks are doing it, but I think maybe they're focusing on the wrong thing, and they will be Trojan horsed by some other stuff. Rick Johnson says, Jake, I said pinhead from Hellraiser movies, not pinehead, like a pine tree. I will inflict pinhead level comedic agony on you. You said bring it. Yeah, I did. And I appreciate your correction there. I get going pretty quickly on these, and a lot of times I misspeak. These are completely live. They're not pre-scripted. I take the questions as they come. It's late in the day. I've had a long day today. And so, please give me a little grace if I am off on my enunciation or pronunciation of different words. Oh, BlockBiz master. So back in the day, I was the BlockBiz on Twitter. So this must be somebody that's an OG that's been following my account for a long time, before I was beyond broke. He says, love the interview with John Squire. Incredible insight. Hash looks fire. Please advise email address that are legit, usually Substack, but recently got one ending in IO. Our emails do end in IO. It is digitalfamilyoffice.io. So if you got one from that. Now, there are some people out there that have created, pseudonyms that are real close, like they'll swap an L or something. So just be careful on that. The people that are targeting us targeted Coinbase and a bunch of other people. They're out of Nigeria, and they're doing a really good job at scamming people. So I appreciate your diligence on that. But if it is, completely right, digitalfamilyoffice.io, it was from us. And a lot of people subscribe to our Substack. If you're not subscribed to our Substack, I don't think I've ever said that on here, but we have around 600,000 people subscribe to the Substack that I put out once or twice a month. We don't overload your inbox with it. When we have something cool to announce, or we have some insight that we want to pass out to the community, we do it through the Substack, and we try to provide a lot of educational material there. So if you do want to go, it's just Jake Claver over there on Substack. Jay Zizzle says, hey, Jake, thanks for all the info. What other categories could the BIS put XRP in other than tier 1? Could be tier 2, could be tier 3. I'm pretty confident it'll be tier 1 though. Tier 1 means riskless. The further down it goes, or the higher the number, the more risk associated with the asset. We already did that one. We did these. All right, here we go. No, sometimes it kicks me up in the chat here. So I'm actually about an hour in, so I'm going to go to all the way to the end, and then we're going to work our way back up here in the super chats. We got Moisty Cow. They say, hey, boss, what are your thoughts on supply shock soon? I know we should have some ETFs coming. BlackRock, wink, wink. Thanks for everything. Feel like that's not too far in the distant future that we will see a BlackRock ETF for XRP. We have a 3 times leveraged XRP ETF that's going live. I think it went live today, actually. They filed their S1 and got approval. And so just so people know on the leveraged ETFs, you have to meet certain criteria with your broker to even be able to participate in those, depending on what platform you're on. And it's not like you can just set that there and benefit, 3 times on the upside. Leveraged ETFs are often meant for trading. And if you're not actively trading those, I don't necessarily think people should be participating in them. It's very hard to time the market, and it's leveraged both directions. So if there's a big move down in XRP, you're going to get 3 times the losses. Now, if there's a big move up, you're going to get 3 times the gains, which is also great. But all that being said, if you just left it in there and rode both, you would probably end up even. You would be about the same as what you would get from a regular ETF. So unless you're actively trading the leveraged ETFs and you're an experienced trader, probably not the best product to put your money into. And again, you're going to have to work with your broker on most platforms to even get access to that. Now, we do have some other spot ETFs that are coming, and those should continue to drive demand. Actually, Evernorth put out a post today about the ETFs and the volume. It's about 11 million a week on average that they're seeing. We are Shadespot. Good to see you. They say, hey, Jake, myself and others are trying to get out of the funds and DWP custody. Sent docs in earlier Feb, was told early May exit. Now I'm told June exit, much more difficult to exit than you made out. So here's the deal on that. We would love to just give you your money back. I've been very adamant with the team that we need to do that. How do I explain this in a way that's like, we had a client the other day that was frustrated with the same situation, and we gave his stuff back. We finally got his stuff out the next day. I understand the frustration. Unfortunately, we have compliance and our fund admin to deal with, and they have to strike a NAV every time somebody exits the fund. We are going to move that to a quarterly basis. So originally when we put these together, we had a different CIO, and I asked a specific question. I said, how fast can people get their stuff out? Because I know there's going to be points where people need to move for whatever reason. He told me a timeline that was not accurate. And I've come on here and stated that a few times, believing that that was the case. It's not the case. Just so people are aware too, most funds, like these private investment vehicles, this is a securities offering. Most funds have a 12-month lockup. We do not. We have a 90-day lockup period. Well, actually, it's a 60-day lockup period before you can request. And then ideally, it's done at least 30 days before the withdrawal. And we're going to be doing those on a quarterly basis moving forward. So that's why you've been told that that'll be June. So if you put it in late February, we probably should have got you out in March, just honestly, and I'll talk to my team about that. Not sure why the delay. I'll take it back, and I appreciate the you bringing it to me on here. But we're going to move to quarterly redemptions out of the fund. So let's say you get in, and for whatever reason, a quarter from now you need it out, or another couple months from now you need it out. If you do want redemptions, now would be the time to tell our team that, so that they can make sure you get out in June at quarter end. So for anybody else that's in the funds that would like out or wants out of custody or for whatever reason, all of that money is there. We've been audited. Witham's our auditor. Securitize is our fund admin. Anchorage is the custodian. We try to be above board on everything and operate under the most stringent compliance that exists out there. Like, there's not an exchange or anybody else that operates under the purview of the SEC. We do. We've actually just gone through our SEC audit. So, all those things. Again, this isn't DeFi. We want to get there. We're working toward that. We want to be able to tokenize these funds in the not too distant future for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned here. But as things sit today, unfortunately, it's still done in an archaic system, and striking a shadow or striking a nav to be able to let people in and out of the fund. Just so like you're aware too, every time that we do that, it's additional cost on our side. I think we've spent, I don't know, probably $400,000 on the fund and the admin and, you know, the compliance and everything that we have to do this in a regulated way under the purview of the SEC. And we're not going to put ourselves in a position to go out of business or violate any of that compliance that would then affect all of the rest of our client base. So if that's when the team said they're going to get it out, I promise that they will. Again, I will take this criticism back to them and figure out what we can do to be better in the future. Rick, he says, what is the one question no one has ever asked you that they would? Thanks for all the hard work, and I'll see you in Vegas next week. They asked you they would. I've got this question a couple times. There was another gentleman, shout out to Jeff. Jeff knows who he is, who was at one of the dinners, and he said, here's a super chat, and put 60 bucks in my pocket and asked me this same question. He said, what's the one question that you wish you'd been asked that you've never been asked? And I've sat with that for a long time. I really, you know, I'm pretty open on here. I think I've gone through, you know, a lot of my life experiences, what's kind of made me who I am and why we work the way that we do. And there's been some people recently that have asked like the long-term goals of DAG. That would probably have been the question up until here recently. And there's certain things, you know, like I kind of play close to the vest, things that are, I don't want to say trade secrets, but things that I think give us an edge over other people that I don't necessarily want to share publicly. I'm a lot more candid than Mastermind about things. I don't know. I appreciate the super chat. I'll see you in Vegas, and maybe we can have that conversation in Vegas. We do have an event in Vegas for those that are going to be there on the Wednesday night. If you're part of the Mastermind, you have that information. We also have another event in Miami that's going to be pretty exclusive. It was invite only, and we've opened that up to the top couple tiers in the Mastermind for people in those tiers to participate. The people that are going to be at that event are very high profile. And I think it'll be a really good time for people that are down there in Florida or are going to be attending Consensus if they want to participate in that. Again, so you need to be Carbon 2 or Carbon 3 in order to get access to that event. But it should be a really good one, and excited for the one there in Vegas as well. Magoo, he says, Jake, my friend, appreciate you. The tea lady and the mods, Beyond Broke Mastermind here. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the community. What are you looking forward to most next for XRP price appreciation? Another anything big next week? You know, we have the FOMC meeting next week, and we do have the Bank of Japan coming out with their monetary policy. Like I just said, though, you know, I was hoping that the OCC would give oversight and guidance on stablecoin issuance and the yield and how that was going to work. And they have released, you know, their paper on how that works. But they're looking for comments, and they're, you know, leaving that open until May 1st. So with that being the case, unless they just say, hey, too bad, so sad, like this is what we're doing, I don't think they're going to. I think that this may push into May or June, depending on how long that takes, because the banks need like full guidance on what it's going to look like to issue stable coins. And until we have that in place, I don't think things are going to move. I would love to be wrong. I would love to see things move faster than that. But I think that's the missing piece that we're still waiting on. Big JK says, Jay Powell raises rates on his way out. Thoughts on Supreme Court allowing Uncle T to remove Cook and replace with Judy Sheldon? Appreciates all that you. I think Judy is going to end up probably at the Treasury. I don't know that she's going to end up at the Fed. I'm hopeful, just like everybody else, that the Fed goes away. I think that that's kind of what's occurring with everything that's playing out here. I think that we're going to move back to the currency being issued from our treasury, gold-backed in a cryptocurrency type of way, like Judy talks about. And I do think that she is going to be involved in that transition around July 4th this year. But they definitely could raise interest rates, and that could in itself cause the reverse carry trade to unwind, because Japan will have to react. So if Japan holds rates, because they're going to have their meeting before the Fed on the 29th, they're closer to like the 27th because their day, the 28th, is our 27th in the evening. They could hold rates, and then Jerome Powell, if he raises interest rates on his way out, that would strengthen the dollar against the yen and cause inflation in their economy, and then they would have to react to that. So there would then have to be an emergency meeting where they raise interest rates to be able to, mitigate that situation where the yen was depreciating against the dollar, worse than 160 to 162, and they would have to strengthen their currency against ours. That's the level that they've held consistently over time. So maybe that's the catalyst for all this to go. Could be the end of this month. But again, I'm pretty confident that we're going to have oversight and regulation by the OCC so that the banks can move forward with stablecoin issuance. Otherwise, the bond market's going to be in a very bad spot when the reverse carry trade unwinds. Roughing It says, can you please tell me what the OCC asked for from the banks by May 1st? Just hearing this when you said it earlier. I can pull it up on Twitter here. Let's give it a go. I'll share my screen. All the other cool kids do this. I normally don't share my screen on the lives, but I can do it here. Let me find this tweet, and we will pull it up. Here it is. All right, we'll share my screen. Share screen. Yes. OCC. So I think you guys can see the screen. Oh, no. Here you go. Now you can. All right. So the OCC has proposed rules set forth implementing the Genius Act to establish a regulatory framework in which stablecoin industry can flourish in a safe and sound manner. Comments by May 1st and learn more. So here's the outline. This was actually released February 25th. Is when they worked on it. So notice of proposed rule, still waiting on, the actual outline of this. I think it's supposed to be like 300 and something pages when they actually release it. So, there's a lot of material in there. But all that being said, I think that they're waiting on comments. And maybe they'll roll it out on May 1st. If they rolled it out on May 1st, you could see things unwind here at the end of the month. And I think that would be, where are we looking at on the calendar here for the weekend? We'll just go back to my calendar. Well, I can kind of guess here. Today's the 22nd. Tomorrow's a Thursday. So that would be over a weekend. Maybe, I've always kind of thought it would play out over a weekend. So we'll have to see. Maybe May is the month that we've all been waiting for. Sean, he says, Jake, love your stuff. I've researched the fast plumbing, faster crashes argument with a frictionless system like XRP. Thoughts on this? I think XRP could be the black swan. Yeah, if they implemented that and we had T+0, and certain things weren't up to date on that, certain infrastructure wasn't in place to be able to, work within that ecosystem, you would definitely see some crashes. You would see players that, weren't up to date, remove themselves very quickly or go bankrupt or have problems, while the other people that were adapted to the new ecosystem would flourish. And there'd be a consolidation of banks and institutions. You would see exchanges consolidated, and I think all that's coming. I think that that's inevitable. I think that there's definitely going to be some legacy players that they've held out too long. They've fought back as much as they could, and they're going to be in a position where they're on their back heels when this comes through. Lori says, hey, Jake, do you know if Uphold's bank accounts will offer interest? I'm making a whopping 0.25% at Capital One. We actually had a conversation with them today about that. Not too distant future. They already have a money market account that you could participate in on their platform. And we would love to roll that out on our platform as well. So, and it's a liquid deal. You can't spend your money while it's in the money market account, but you can move it in and out at any time. And so, you know, they can insure up to $2.5 million in that product, which I think is a huge value add. So the answer is yes. They already have that, and then we would be looking to implement it as well. Beercoin says, I enrolled on the app on Wednesday last week, still in a review. What's the timeline delay? So, you know, I talked about this in the mastermind, but I will address it here also. There's never been a partner that's really believed us when we said that there's going to be, you know, hundreds or thousands of people that move in a very short period of time. A lot of people say that stuff and they're blowing smoke and they're kind of full of it. You know, this happened with our fund admin. It happened with pretty much every partner we've ever had. We say, hey, like, we're going to have a lot of volume very quickly. Can you handle it? And they're always like, yeah, we got it. They got it. So Uphold, I will say, has been fast to react to that. They are absolutely working through all the applications at a rapid pace. And I'd expect that they will have a resolution to that probably early next week. Everybody should be through that, through the KYB, and have their accounts open there in the app. And again, I appreciate your patience and grace in this transition and process. You know, when you have that much demand at one time, people tend to be on their back foot, like I'm talking about with the XRP and that other situation. And again, just really blessed and humbled and grateful to have so many fantastic clients that want to work with us. But that does cause some frictions sometimes and delays as well. So again, appreciate you bringing it to my attention. I'm well aware of it, and we're working through it as fast as we can. James, Mr. Newman, he says, Jake, love your content. In Australia, we're paying more beer tax than the big companies pay in gas tax. There's been some suggestion to tax Japan 25% reverse carry trade. Japan actually moved XRP to a financial instrument not that long ago, and then they moved all their crypto taxes to 20% in that jurisdiction. But yeah, anything, you know, that's a jurisdiction that's under, it's no longer under the monarchy, but you know, the 28 different jurisdictions globally that operate in that consortium, they're going to get theirs. The government's going to get theirs. We have a lot of people from Australia that we're working with to move to Dubai and other jurisdictions, set things up in BVI and other jurisdictions to be able to mitigate taxes and structure things accordingly. It is residency taxed there in Australia. So same thing with the UK and Canada and many others. The United States is citizenship taxed. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, the US government's going to get theirs. But if you do want to move offshore and only spend a certain amount of time there on the mainland in Australia, you can, you know, mitigate your taxes that way. It's me, Satoshi. What's up, dude? He says, Jake, tinfoil hat time. Thoughts on Amuna, Ajuna, Aspringa? Yeah, so that same riddle, you know, we'll put the tinfoil hat on for you guys. That same riddle talked about keep an eye on XRP. Project Ion was finalized in August of 2022 between the DTCC and R3. So if you want to put your tinfoil hat on and you want to look at the riddles and all those things, I think that was pointing to Project Ion, and June could be the month. You've also got, you know, again, we'll just keep the tinfoil hat on for a second. There was some comments that Bob Way made years ago about upgrading your flight to first class on June 1st. So is it May? Is it June? Is it July? Again, like I said, I'm really paying attention these next 3 months here for how things go. Druzy says, small bag of XRP, never sell. Opinion on XRP ETFs for my kids. Concerned about complexity and risk management for a bearer asset because ETFs can be purchased easily through institutions early. Thanks to you, lady. I think that they're a good solution, right? There's a lot of people that don't want to deal with exchanges and cold wallets or institutional custody and managing the bearer asset or DeFi. There's a large learning curve. And for many investors, like, they don't want to deal with it. The ETFs are a great way to get exposure to that. And you can see that from Goldman Sachs. I mean, Goldman Sachs is the largest buyer of XRP ETFs. If they couldn't hold XRP directly, that would be a great way to get exposure to the asset. So I think that they're great. I was on a conversation earlier today that, again, we're going to be at the consensus and we're speaking there with the Wealth Day with other RIAs. There's a lot of different financial products and solutions to be able to get exposure to this asset class. And those are right for different demographics of people. If you've got a small bag and you're going to hold that on a cold wallet, some diversification into ETFs through your 401k or your IRA or your traditional stock portfolio, I think could absolutely make sense. Again, I am not a financial advisor, can't tell you what to do, but there are a lot of options out there, and I think the ETFs provide a great avenue for a certain type of investor to get exposure. And you said your kids. So if you had, I can't think of the type of account that it is, but there's a certain type of account that you can use for like college or other types of expenses. There's certain exempt expenses for your children. They can use it for education. That might be a good way to leverage the XRP ETFs if you could buy those in that type of vehicle to be able to pay for their college or the other exemptions that qualified account provides. John Burnett, he says, do you think there will be a big announcement at XRP Vegas for ZBEC and XRP? How do you feel about ZBEC? I think it's a great niche application. Real-time payroll or daily payroll, I think, is absolutely going to be a thing in the near future as we move to real-time settlement. I think that would absolutely impact the velocity of money. It would give people money faster so that they could then spend it in the economy. I think that that's also going to require some discipline from people that you haven't had to have up to this point. When you're receiving your paycheck bi-weekly or bi-monthly, most people have it spent before they get it. They have the rent due, they have things coming out at certain times. And if you're getting paid every single day, to ration that or pay those expenses may not be as easy for some people to reconcile. So I think it could cause some issues, but I think it's a great application. They are speaking there at XRP Vegas, so we will see if there's some type of partnership or something that comes out. Excited to hear, but I don't know anything specifically. Marty, he says, Jake, the Great, and the T-Queen, Beyond Broke Mastermind Carbon 1 for a minute now, and new to DAG. How do we see the banking option in the app? So there's a little button at the top. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull this up so people can see it. We'll just give you guys a live demo. We will go to app.digital.ascensiongroup.com. All right. Let's see if I can log in here before we show you guys what my email address is and all the stuff. Okay. All right. We're able to share screen again. So here is the portal here. Once you upload your LLC documents, you can add trading by Uphold. So when you click on this, you'll have to select a business that you've uploaded the documents for, purchased through our app here. You can say add a business and start a new business, or add an existing business. If you start a new business, you'll initiate the application. If you're going to upload an existing one, you just check this box, agree to this, and then say continue, and then it'll ask you for this information so that you can upload your existing business. But again, if you wanted to, add the trading component, it's going to ask you to read the terms of service, and then allow you to check this box. You say continue, but I don't have a business profile uploaded in here. So again, I don't have the trading app live, but that's where you would go to get the bank account and the trading application. And you can see again, it's powered by Uphold here. So hopefully that answers the question for you. You just click on that button, apply through the KYB, select your business that you're applying with, and then they will take some time to get you through KYB. Call it 5 business days. Hopefully it's faster than that. But I think that's kind of the lead time that we're currently looking at before you'll have the bank account associated with the LLC, and then also the trading application to be able to trade. And we're 1% on all trades with no spread. So significant reduction compared to the majority of platforms out there. I'm trying to pass those savings on. Again, most people, if you do file an LLC with us, I think we're done with the promotion for the $700 for the year. It is $100 a month to use the platform, manage your LLC, get all the corporate administrative stuff, along with the updated operating agreement, and then all the other tangential services that we'll be adding on over the next 6 to 12 months. Bob Dylan, he says, purchase treasuries with stablecoins and double dip. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. I did see that the CME and the DTCC can leverage treasuries for cross margin here in the near future, which I think is a big deal. And I think that goes live on April 30th for those entities. But yeah, as far as stablecoin issuers buying more treasuries with the stablecoins, that would, you could do that. I guess you could. There's always going to be looping in crypto. So to be able to generate additional yield on a lot of these stable coins or money market products or other things, if you're issued a receipt token or a wrap token, you can then take that, leverage it, invest again, and you can loop it multiple times to get additional yield. You are taking leverage, and if there's something that goes wrong with the underlying collateral or those investments, it is going to wipe you out. So just be aware of the risks that you're taking when you do that type of stuff. And treasuries are a tier 1 collateral asset if they're U.S. treasuries. The U.S. has defaulted twice in our history. So BIS says they're riskless, so probably that's the case. But again, in the near future, when the reverse carry trade unwinds, if we don't have a way to drive demand domestically for those treasuries, there's going to be some significant volatility for people holding those. Al Perez says, what happened to your business if XRP is at a low price for the next 2 years? We'd be fine. We've built it around price appreciation for XRP, but we provide wealth management and all of these additional services for other ecosystems too. We just launched our Bitcoin product. We're going to be at Bitcoin Vegas. There are other family offices and high net worth individuals that we consult for, and we're continuing to gain traction in that market. We're also becoming a sub-advisor for other RIAs. So if your wealth manager wants to be able to add crypto to their wealth management practice, we just slide into the fold. We have all the compliance and everything built in there. So we have an enterprise side to our business that we've built out as well. And so, yeah, we've got multiple ways that we are able to service our clients and provide value. I don't think we would grow as fast, right? So we've really kind of added all the headcount that I think we're going to need for the liquidity event at this point. And that's sustainable with our current income and where we're at in the market. So whether it appreciates or not really doesn't make a big difference on our business side. But if it did, and I think it will appreciate sooner than later. We are ready for that. All right. I think I've got through all these other. Oh, here we go. Baseball Babe. She says, hey, Jake, wanted to say thank you to you and the tea lady. I really hope to meet her in Vegas. She will not be there with me this year, unfortunately. I haven't been up to speed on the Vegas events, but I have an LLC with y'all. Since I can't remember, I'll catch back up. Oh, Carbon One and Super ADHD. Sound like me. bouncing around all over the place. If you just want to go check there in the mastermind, I think you can look at the events tab and you'll be able to find the event there in Vegas that we're going to be hosting. And again, excited to see you there here next week. Actually, 1 week from today, it'll be at this time. So I won't be on the live next Wednesday. I will be at our event there in Vegas. DFW Mike, my man, he says, evening boss, Beyond Broke Mastermind meet up this weekend, and we'll be magnifying my wealth the weekend after, trying to get as much education as I can to stay wealthy after price appreciation. Sophia says hello to the tea lady. Safe travels over the next few weeks. Have a drink on me. Thank you, man. I really do appreciate that. And we have a really packed next few weeks. We'll be at in Vegas next week for Bitcoin Vegas and XRP Vegas. We'll be at Consensus the next week. They're in Miami for F1 and Dericon also. And then we'll be off to Bermuda for SALT. And then after that, I get back and I go to New Orleans for a PPLI and family office conference. So I think I'm home a total of like 6 days in the next 4 weeks. So the wife is not overly happy about that. And I apologize profusely to her. Unfortunately, it's just how things landed with the calendar. Luckily, after June, my schedule drops way off and I'm home. I think we have 2 or 3 more events before the end of the year. So action-packed next couple of weeks, and I appreciate the support, and I will definitely have an old-fashioned on you. Hey, Legend, I noticed that there is legislation being proposed in many states to implement a wealth tax on assets that are held, not liquidated or realized. Can we defer from this end up to federal? Well, we help a lot of people structure their stuff there in Wyoming, and the assets would be held by the LLC in Wyoming. So they would be out of the state that you would be in. Now, if you're in California or some of those states that you're talking about, they're going to get theirs. They're going to figure out a way to do it. The irrevocable trust would probably be the best way to get those assets out of your estate, your taxable estate, and move them into, in Wyoming, you can do a 1,000-year trust. A couple other jurisdictions do that as well. I think South Dakota has 1,000 years also. That would be what I would look at doing if you want to continue to live in the state that you currently reside in. If you don't, then moving would also help you on mitigating those taxes. I don't think that stuff's going to get passed. I saw a heat map of where wealth had moved over the past 4 years since COVID. Well, 5 years since COVID the other day. And New York and California had huge wealth leave both of those states. Texas and Florida got the lion's share of that. Again, no state taxes here in Texas or in Florida. And they're about to remove property taxes there in Florida, which I'm concerned about. I don't know how they're going to be able to pay for their public infrastructure and their law enforcement and other stuff. So that'll be interesting to watch. Here in Texas, we have high property tax. That's kind of the offset that they use to be able to, continue to fund public infrastructure, which again, I'm okay with paying, like schools and police officers and roads and all that. I want that to be well maintained. I don't know if you guys have ever driven through Oklahoma. Not the best roads there in Oklahoma. Texas, pretty good most of the time. They fill the potholes. They do a good job. But all that being said, you could move, and I don't think that they're going to have unrealized capital gains tax here in the U.S. If they do, it'll continue to force people out of those states, and they will continue to lose revenues. And eventually, they're going to figure out, like, this isn't working. People aren't staying here. They're not going to put up with this crap. So now that could, my conspiracy theory or my tinfoil hat on that is that they do want people to move out of those states. They want the property values to come down, and they want to implement smart cities in the larger cities in those jurisdictions. So New York, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, larger metropolitan areas in those democratic states. I think they're trying to drive property values down so that they can buy a bunch of that up and then implement smart cities there over the next 5 to 10 years and then push people back into those areas. We'll see if I'm right about that. That's my conspiracy theory coming out. Al Perez again, he says, we already been through that one again. Good question. We are at an hour and a half. Let's see. What else do we have here? We did that one. Sorry, just going back up through the chat here to try and make sure I don't miss any of these. I think we did that one as well. I think I got to that one before I jumped to, nope, here's another one. We got God is Good, 1000X. Love the name. So what's up, Jake? I'm 26 years old and married. We have between 10,000 and 13,000 XRP. What would you be doing in my situation? Thanks for the insight. Jesus is king. Great question. So you are married. I just keep stacking. You're not in a position yet where you have at least $50,000 to $80,000, and you'd be on the upper end of that because you're married. You only get 30 million for your lifetime gift tax threshold here in the U.S. I'm assuming you're U.S. You didn't state that, but I'm going to make that assumption. So, you know, post price appreciation, let's say we get $1,000 XRP or even a $2,000 XRP. Okay, we're going to be wildly optimistic here. You're at 20M, 24, 25M. That's still enough that you can structure your estate, set up an LLC after, mitigate taxes, you know, do all the things that you need to do. And spending that money right now on an LLC or an irrevocable trust or other things, I think is a bit premature. So, you know, I would just continue to dollar cost average in your position, you know, at your discretionary income, stuff that you don't need to pay bills with, anything else. If you have some extra and you wanted to invest that extra, obviously take vacations, do other things, happy wife, happy life. But you've got a good bag, right? Like that's a great investment to be 26 years old and have that type of allocation. I think you're doing a great job. So just keep on keeping on. I think you're doing what you should be doing, and post price appreciation, you should be able to reconcile everything that you need to and get into position to mitigate taxes and structure things the right way. We already did DFW Mike. DFW Mike puts awesome events on here in Texas. And that's the other cool thing about the mastermind that I want to mention. A lot of people there in the mastermind have taken upon themselves to put together dinners or lunches or brunches or other things in whatever part of the country they're in. And the community will go and they all meet and hang out and develop friendships and network before price appreciation. So like, what are you going to do? It sucks to get rich alone, right? If you don't have a friend group or peer group that can go on vacations or do cool stuff with you and you have to afford them the opportunity to do that, it just builds animosity, and the people you expect you to pick up the check. And like, there's just all this social dynamic that's developed if you're not dealing with people that are similar peers and similar net worth. So developing those relationships now, I think, is paramount. And if that's something that interests you, we would love to have you in the community. Those are open to anybody that's in the mastermind. Again, all you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2. No contract, month to month, cancel anytime. But we do have over, I think it's 17,000 people there in the group that continue to stay and enjoy the benefits of the financial education, private deals, and the community events that we host. Marital Mentor, they say legend. Japan had a major earthquake and tsunami volcano eruption with a warning of 8.0 plus earthquake coming next week. Thoughts on natural disaster on top of oil crisis as a catalyst or scapegoat? Anything that disrupts supply chain and logistics is going to cause additional inflation in their economy. So those could absolutely compound to exacerbate what's going on. I don't know if that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think that there may be some monetary policy that probably does that, or the continued, you know, pressure of oil prices, but that could absolutely compound things. So it's a possibility. You know, I'm not going to rule it out. Maybe that will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Rick Johnson again. He says, Claver solves a gold cube puzzle. Pinhead emerges from the shadows. Pinhead, oh Jake, we have such sights and sensations to show you. Rick Johnson told us all about you, Pinhead Smiles, Royd Man. Rick, I will say you have a fantastic imagination. I tell my son this all the time. Don't lose that, man. That's one thing that I think as people get older, they don't dream. They don't have this internal monologue or these outlandish things that they think about. And I think I don't know, you just get relegated into this simple reality that's monotonous. Most of your life is automated. Like 90% of your life is automated if you've had the same job for more than 5 years after you're 30 years old. A lot of time I drive to work and I don't remember getting there because I take the same path. When I take my boy to school in the morning and I do other stuff, I try to go different directions and like actually go around a different way just so that I can like be present in the moment and enjoy that time. It's just little tips and tricks like that that I think help enhance your life and quality of life. I think a lot of people get caught up in the day-to-day and their life just passes by. And if you don't have imagination or time to sit and think and like dream about stuff and actually work toward those, life gets to be boring. So appreciate your imagination and enthusiasm. Roughing it again, she says, did Japan say they weren't raising rates until April 27, 28? I didn't hear that. They could, right? So that's when their meeting is this month. They've said that they're not going to raise till June. You've had other previous heads at the Bank of Japan come out and say that they should raise interest rates and they need to be around 1.5. So that's 75 basis points to get them to where they actually need to be. I don't know. Again, I'm pretty confident that the OCC is going to have rules in place before they let that unwind. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they kind of push it out a little bit further. I would love to be wrong on that. I would love for next week to be the week and everything pop off and XRP Vegas be awesome. But I don't know that that's going to be the case. We've got behind the badge film. They say, does the elimination of PTD rule help XRP in any kind of way or speed up the price appreciation utility process? Perfect timing, don't you think? PDT. I don't know what that means, so I'm going to give it a Google. PDT rule. Pattern day trader. This is a FINRA rule. 4210 mandates that margin accounts with more than 3 days trading in 5 business days maintain a minimum of $25,000 balance. This is effective on June 4th of 2026. The SEC has approved replacing this $25,000 requirement with new intraday margin standards. I mean, I don't see why that would do anything for XRP, but maybe I'm missing the correlation here. Let me think on it. Again, like I'm literally learning about it real time, so I'd probably need a little bit of time to digest it before I could give you an actual answer, but I appreciate you bringing it to my attention, and I will ponder on it. Let's see here. I think we got through all of the upper super chats. We're going to go back down to the bottom. I'm going to grab a few more before we wrap it up tonight. We got Behold, and they say, can we sell 30 mil worth of XRP and just gift tax? So the gift tax is moving it out of your estate to somebody else. So it's not to be a way to be able to circumvent capital gains. You could die. So that's what the gift tax is. It's an estate tax. Your heirs, if they inherited exactly $30 million worth of XRP, they could then sell it and get zero capital gains on it because they would inherit it at the higher basis or the price at which when you passed away. You have a basis that's already locked in from when you purchased those assets. You can gift up to $30 million over your lifetime out of your taxable estate to either your children, somebody else, or an irrevocable trust. You could also make donations, right? So you could at any time donate a lot of money. There are limitations on what you can write off per year. So I believe in-kind donations are limited to, depending on if it's a public charity or a a private foundation. I believe it's 30% of your total gross income can be donated to a public charity in kind. You can go up to 60% in cash, and then up to 20% in kind can be donated to a private foundation. Again, so your total gross income for the year, you could donate up to 20% of that. So if you sold $30 million worth of XRP, you could donate up to 30% in cash to a private foundation. So 10 million, or up to 20 million to, well, a little less than 20 million, because that's 2/3, be 66%. So call it 18 million. 18 million you could donate to a public charity and write that off. But gifting it out of your taxable estate, and I guess you could mitigate taxes that way, but you would want to gift it while it was in kind. You wouldn't want to gift it when you sold it, because you're going to have to deal with the tax implications if you sell it. And you're going to need a way to offset those. Again, I am not a tax attorney. I'm not an estate planner. I know enough to be dangerous. You should always consult with somebody that actually knows what they're talking about and like does it for a living. If you need those professionals, we have them. So just reach out to digitalfamilyoffice.io, and we can provide you a list of people that are either in-house for us or partners that we have to be able to help you navigate that situation when it plays out. XRP Maxi, he says, hey, Jake, I have no Anchorage type facility in Australia. My friends and I meet your requirements and are just waiting. Are you headed down under? You can work with us, my man. There's nothing preventing. We work with many Australians. We have multiple Australian clients. As long as you're not on a sanctions list, we're good. We can also accept individuals now at Anchorage. So even if you don't have it structured in a family trust or a self-managed super fund there in Australia, even if you're holding it directly in your personal name, we can work with you. And we would love to. If you meet the minimums, you should just go to digitalwealthpartners.net. Go to the contact us page there, fill that out, and one of our representatives will reach out. I will say, our hours are going to be different than Australia. So that's been some of the feedback that we've gotten. We're working on a 24-hour, customer service. We're not quite there yet. We believe that we will have that implemented in the next quarter or so. So give us some grace, on timeframes. It's probably 10 a.m. Let's see, what time is it for you guys there? Maybe actually mid-afternoon, Australia time. Yeah, it's almost 2 p.m. for you guys. So, our team is not working at 10 p.m. at night or 11 p.m. at night here Central Time. I'm up. But they will get back to you via email. And if you need a phone call, they will operate out of business hours. There's been many times that I have either woken up at like 6 a.m. and got on calls with people in Australia because it's late your time in the evening, in the afternoon. And then I've also, got on calls with people like 7, 8, 9 a.m. your time. That's late in the evening our time. So that's the only friction that I just want to be transparent about in working with us, is we don't operate on Australia time. But we absolutely can custody your assets there at Anchorage and work with you if you are an Australian individual or have your assets in any structure. Mike, he says, hey, Jake, do you think the Clarity fight has more to do with many shorts that can't be covered once the stock market is on chain, AMC and GME or GameStop, or is it really about yield? I think that could be a component. Like I was saying the other day with the Strait of Hormuz and some of the other things that have happened, I think that they are multifaceted. I think that they accomplish multiple objectives, and the opposition isn't always visceral. Like, it's not always on the surface where you can see it. Sometimes it is a couple layers deeper, and there's some other things that people are trying to hide or stick in a back corner that they don't want visibility of. So it could absolutely, that could definitely be a component of that. The banks have some of the largest unrealized losses that they've had in history. They're actually a little bit up from where they were because the stocks have appreciated and some other stuff, but they're still way underwater. So could definitely be a piece of it. This person says, hey, Jake, I hope you and your family are well. Blessed, brother. Everybody's healthy and happy, and I appreciate the support and the kind words. He says, how you feel about the Bank of Japan meeting at the end of the month? You think they will hike the interest rates? Domino theory is still in play. I believe it's absolutely still in play, but again, my opposition to that at this point is the OCC is waiting till May 1st for comments. Are they going to roll this out on May 1st? Maybe. Are they going to give the banks a 60-day extension? I don't think so. Maybe May's our month, right? XRP Vegas is at the end of this month here. Maybe the people that are hosting that know something that I don't know, and they've timed that for a party. I would love to see it if that's the case. I will be there in Vegas. So, Ripple posted an interesting post today. They said Monday Vegas next week, and they had 777 on a slot machine. Maybe things happened before. I don't know. We're just, I'm waiting just like you guys are. I just see the writing on the wall and the events that are inevitably going to play out, and excited for the ride. We already did this one. XRP Maxi, again, we would love to work with you. If you would like to work with us and hold your assets there at Anchorage. I think I got all the super chats. Inevitably, I've missed a super chat. If I did, we will have, oh, here we go. This person, they say mastermind member over a year. Awesome. Thank you for being part of the community. Going to Consensus in May. Yes, I will be there. He said they'll be competing in the hackathon. Very cool. Yeah, we will be at Consensus all 3 days. We will also be there the Monday for HederaCon, and we have an event for F1. If you're in Carbon 2 or 3, you have access to the exclusive event that we're hosting with some interesting speakers. 68J, my man, he says, Las Vegas meetup, 2026, 7 days away. Hope to see you all there. Wednesday, 4/29/26, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So our event is at 7 p.m. And later. It's kind of like the after party for 68J's event. I will be at 68J's event there in Vegas. Many of the other people that you might follow on YouTube, he's done a fantastic job of getting everybody in one room, and it's very economical. I think some of the sponsors have actually come in, and I don't know if the event's free or not. He put out a video the other day, so if you want to go check out his channel there on either YouTube or on X, I think he's got the details. I know that the live, they're going to be streaming it live, and that'll be free for people. And it may be free for people that are participating in person. If not, get your tickets now. I think you can use the code DWP10 for a discount there on that stuff. And again, excited for that event. Appreciate him hosting that there in Vegas, just 7 days away. Oh, this was a big announcement that I didn't even mention. He said, thank you for adding XDC and HBAR to the purchase with our accounts. When and if are you adding hash? So as of today, Anchorage can now trade HBAR and XDC, and we can hold those assets for our clients there at Digital Wealth Partners. We have been working on that for so long. Can't believe I didn't mention it earlier. Super excited to have that. And again, so if you're already a Digital Wealth Partners client, or you maybe didn't quite have enough to be able to work with us, but you had those assets along with your XRP, XLM, Bitcoin, Solana, Matic, Chainlink, Ethereum, whatever you got. If you have at least $100,000 in assets or at least 50,000 XRP, we would love to work with you over there at Digital Wealth Partners and can provide institutional, like real institutional grade custody for all of those assets there through Anchorage. A couple, we already did that one. Yeah, I think I got them all. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it. Again, if I missed your super chat, please send it to us. You can email it to info@digitalfamilyoffice.io or just send it to us in a DM on a social media platform. And my wonderful wife, the tea lady, will collect those for me, and I'll have them for y'all next Monday when we are on the live. I wish y'all a wonderful week. Again, if you want to join the mastermind, we talk about this and much more there. You can use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, #1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2 there at beyondbroke.com. If you need professionals to be able to help you, mitigate risk, structure things the right way, prepare for the liquidity event for your XRP and your other digital assets, we would love to work with you. You go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and just select the service that you're looking for. We have tax partners, we have the estate planning, everything that you could imagine there to be able to help you guys with that, all the professionals that you would need. And then last but not least, if you would like to work with us on the wealth management side, you can go to digitalwealthpartners.net and use the contact us form. So c'est la vie. God bless all you guys. I hope you'll have a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next one.